Hieronymous opened his eyes as he sat up in bed. He could hear the sounds of his children laughing and playing coming from the kitchen. He got up slowly and made his way to his desk. He sat down and opened up a book to read his notes. He understood that this was his research. He was working on something important. That was what his mind told him, but his books contained no words, no legible letters. There were only black, squiggly lines meant to imitate the shape of letters, of words, of sentences. But Hieronymous did not notice. Eventually, he abandons his research as he heads into the kitchen. That smells good. What you cookin', Bee? He wraps his arms around her waist as he presses his back into her front, placing a trail of kisses along her neck, leading up to her jaw before she turns around to place her lips against his in a chaste kiss. Your breakfast, she replies. Nice of you to finally come out of your study and join your family. You work too much, hero. He's about to answer when his young daughter runs up to him. It was his daughter, but she didn't have a name. He didn't question why she didn't have a name. Daddy, look what I drew. It was just a series of colors mashed together with crayons. There were no shapes, nothing discernible to the eye, but Hieronymous did not notice. Instead, he smiled at her warmly as he hoisted her into his lap. It's very nice. This is the house and all of us, right? She nods, and he is about to say something else when suddenly he hears something hit the window. He looks up just in time to see a flash of blue outside the window. He sets the girl down as he goes to the door and heads outside. Hero? Violet calls after him, but Hieronymous does not answer as he goes around to the side of the house by the garden. There was nothing there. It's nothing, he says as he comes back inside. I think a bluebird must have hit the window. Poor birdie, the girl said, and he just nodded as he began to eat the breakfast Violet placed in front of him. Remember when you dyed your hair blue, V? He asks with a slight laugh. I remember picking blue hairs off my cape for weeks. Blue hair? Violet asks as she raises an eyebrow. I never dyed my hair blue. Of course you did, he reminds her. It was right before you ran for treasury position your freshman year. Violet seemed about to take a drink of something, but suddenly spits it out in the sink as she bursts out laughing. Are you serious? She asks as she tries to get her laughter under control. Me? As treasurer? She comes over and places a hand on his forehead. Do you have a fever, or did you have another girlfriend that I don't know about? You know there's no one for me but you, he replies, and Violet bends down to kiss him. Still, there was something that seemed off to him. He just couldn't be sure what it was. If he closed his eyes, he could picture himself removing a strand of blue hair from his shoulder. He remembered that he wanted to be annoyed. He remembered that he wasn't. And he was surprised that he wasn't. But what did that mean now? That night, he closes his eyes and slips off to sleep. He wasn't usually one to dream, but he could almost be certain that there was a girl with blue hair sitting in a chair set beside the bed. Her cheek was resting on the side of the bed, her face turned towards him, and although it was like looking through glass, he could tell that her cheeks were red and stained with tears. He wanted to ask her what was wrong. He wanted to ask her why she was crying, but his mouth couldn't form the words to speak. And then he woke up. Hieronymous opened his eyes as he sat up in bed. He could hear the sounds of his children laughing and playing coming from the kitchen. He got up slowly and made his way to his desk. He sat down and opened up a book to read his notes. He understood that this was his research. He was working on something important. That was what his mind told him, but his books contained no words, no legible letters. There were only black, squiggly lines meant to imitate the shape of letters, of words, of sentences. But Hieronymous did not notice. Eventually, he abandons his research as he heads into the kitchen. That smells good. What you cookin', V? He wraps his arms around her waist as he presses his back into her front, placing a trail of kisses along her neck, leading up to her jaw before she turns around to place her lips against his in a chaste kiss. "Your breakfast," she replies. "Nice of you to finally come out of your study and join your family. You work too much, hero." He is about to answer when his young daughter runs up to him. It was his daughter, but she didn't have a name. He didn't question why she didn't have a name. "Daddy, look what I drew." It was just a series of colors mashed together with crayons. There were no shapes, nothing discernible to the eye, but Hieronymous did not notice. Instead, he smiled at her warmly as he hoisted her into his lap. "It's very nice. This is the house in all of us, right?" Today, there was no knock on the window. There was no flash of blue, but the blue crayon in his daughter's drawing suddenly brought back the reminder of the girl from his dream. "Hey, V, remember when you dyed your hair blue?" he asks, but she just gives him a perturbed look as she raises an eyebrow. "Blue hair?" she asks as she raises an eyebrow. "Why would I dye my hair blue? People would think I was some sort of a freak." But she did. It was right before she ran for treasury position her freshman year. But Violet would never run for any class office. So why was he so sure that she did? "Do you remember where we went to school?" he asks suddenly. "What was the name of the place we went to?" "The Orion Research Institute," she replies without missing a beat. "Why? Thinking about going back and graduating?" He chuckles for a moment. "Do you think they'd let me go back?" "Why?" She seems mildly insulted. "What would be the point in leaving your family and going back to school? What possible use would you have for a degree? What would you even do with it?" "I don't know." He shrugs absent-mindedly. "Maybe I'd become a teacher." She frowns and puts her hands on her hips. You want to be a teacher. You hated school. You hate classrooms. You hate structure. And you hate people that aren't as smart as you. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but if you became a teacher, none of the students would be as smart as you. That's sort of the point of being a teacher. You're the one who's going to have to make them smarter. Do you really think you can handle that?" Hieronymous shrugs again. "It was just a thought." She visibly bristles. "And besides, if you try to go back, your father is going to force you to take up his seat and be a viscount. Is that what you really want? Do you really want to go back there and play his puppet?" "No, of course not," Hieronymous replies. "I just want a nice quiet life with you, me, and the kids." With that, he goes back to eating his breakfast. Still, there was something that didn't seem right to him. Over the course of the next few days, he found that he was starting to remember details that didn't quite line up with what he knew should be true. "Remember when I watched you start a snowball fight in the middle of the quad that winter?" he asks her. "Snowball fight?" she asks blankly. "When did we ever get snow in London?" "Well, we weren't in London," he starts, but she just continues to stare at him with that blank look on her face. "We've only lived in London and the other world," she reminds him. "When could we have ever had a snowball fight?" "America. Vermont. Iris Academy." "I don't know. Didn't we take a class trip to some institution in Vermont one year?" he asks her, because I distinctly recall. "I think you're going crazy, Hero," she teases him. "Stop thinking about the past and just enjoy what you have now. This is the life you've always wanted, isn't it?" "Yes, but Hieronymus's voice trails off as he makes a blind grab for his chest to steady himself. His fingers try to close around something around his neck, but there's nothing there. He tries to play it off by scratching his neck, but as soon as Violet has her back turned, he can't help but let his fingers probe his chest just below his throat. He felt a creeping sense of emptiness overtake him suddenly, but he wasn't sure why. There was something that was supposed to be there. There was something that was missing. He felt like an empty glass of water that was just sitting beside the sink, waiting to be refilled. He should take Violet's advice. He had always wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, just hiding out in some small corner of the world, but maybe you were born into this role for a reason. You are too smart and too powerful to just hide out as a teacher your whole life. Maybe there's some great big destiny you were born to fulfill. I don't know, but I do know that you're not going to be happy spending the rest of your life here. Even if you never met me, I think, at the end, you'd regret it. What? Hieronymous snaps suddenly as he looks up, only to realize he's sitting alone in the kitchen. Through the window, he can see Violet and their children tending to the garden outside, but he was so sure that he had heard her talking to him just now. He remembered that conversation, too. It was when... No, he couldn't remember. When he goes to sleep that night, he dreams of the blue-haired girl, but this time, she's not asleep. She was talking to him, holding his hand in both of hers, although she didn't seem to realize that he could hear her. I just want to thank you so much, she tells him. I never got a chance to thank you, but I mean it. I really do. You were always there for me. You were always supporting me, even when I was completely and utterly stupid. You were always there for me right when I needed you to be, and I never told you how much I appreciated that. But it's true. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, but even if we just got a few short years together, they were the best years of my life, Hieronymous. You taught me so much about myself and the world, and you were the best friend I could have ever asked for. There's a knock on the door, and the girl quickly wipes at her face with the back of her wrist. Yeah? Come in. Tori? Owen asks. She says something else, but he begins to feel himself slip away. The only thing that he can hear is her name, echoing in his mind. It's just a name, but there are emotions that follow along with it. Happiness. Satisfaction. Peace. As he repeats her name in his mind, he can feel his whole body relaxing as he tries to picture her face. Tori. 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 Hieronymous opened his eyes as he sat up in bed. He could hear the sounds of his children laughing and playing coming from the kitchen. He got up slowly and made his way to his desk. He sat down and opened up a book to read his notes. He understood that this was his research. He was working on something important.